She had always lived a quiet life, one that many would call ordinary, but for her it was colored with a deep sense of longing she could never fully explain. Every morning she woke up in her small apartment, the sun just beginning to stretch its golden fingers across the city streets. She moved through her routine with careful steps, making herself coffee and staring out of the window as if hoping that somehow, today might be different. She had grown used to feeling invisible, not in a dramatic way, but in the way that she was always there, always helpful, always polite, and yet somehow never noticed beyond the surface. She had learned early in life that asking for attention only led to disappointment, and so she became quiet, patient, and observant. Her apartment was modest but cozy, filled with small touches that reflected her personality, a small shelf of books she had collected over the years, a few potted plants that she carefully nurtured, and photographs of landscapes she had never visited but dreamed about. She had always been fascinated by stories of people who made a difference, stories of courage and kindness, but she had never imagined herself as someone who could step into one. Her life felt safe in its predictability, yet sometimes that safety felt like a cage. Work offered a kind of escape, though not a thrilling one. She worked at a local office, organizing files, answering phones, and helping anyone who needed assistance. She liked to think she made people's days a little easier, even if no one ever said thank you. There were moments, small ones, when she felt connected to someone. A brief smile exchanged with a stranger in the elevator or a kind word from a coworker. But those moments were fleeting. Deep down she carried a quiet yearning, a desire for a bond that went beyond the ordinary. She had never had someone to truly care for her in the way she imagined a mother would. She often remembered her own childhood, marked by absences and unspoken words. Her mother had loved her in her own way, but that love was distant, almost intangible, and her father had been gone most of the time, leaving her to navigate the world largely on her own. Evenings were the hardest. After work, she would walk through the city streets, blending into the crowd, feeling both comforted and lonely at the same time. She liked to watch people, to imagine the stories behind their faces, wondering what joys or sorrows they carried. She noticed the small things others overlooked, the way a child's laughter could brighten a gloomy day, the tiredness in a delivery worker's eyes, the gentle smile of someone lost in thought. These observations made her feel alive, even as a quiet ache grew inside her, a longing for a connection she had never fully experienced. On one particular evening, the sky was painted in deep shades of purple and orange, the clouds reflecting the last light of the sun. She had stayed late at work, finishing up a project that no one would likely even notice, and she decided to take a slightly longer route home, through a quieter part of the city. The streets were less crowded, and a cool breeze carried the smell of rain that had fallen earlier, fresh and clean. She liked this part of the city, the way it felt removed from the constant noise and rush, a place where she could think. Her thoughts often wandered to what her life might have been like if she had grown up in a household filled with warmth, laughter, and unconditional love. She imagined what it would feel like to be someone's source of comfort, someone who mattered in the most profound way. It was then that she heard it, soft and almost imperceptible at first, a cry, faint and trembling, echoing from the shadows between two buildings. She stopped in her tracks, her heart tightening in an unexpected way. The cry repeated, insistent yet fragile, and instinctively, she moved toward the sound. The city, usually so familiar, seemed to shift around her, the alleyways darker, the shadows deeper. She felt a sudden rush of concern mixed with fear. What if someone dangerous was nearby? What if this was a trap? But the cry tugged at her heart, impossible to ignore. She followed it, each step careful yet urgent, until she saw a small bundle tucked against a dumpster, shivering in the cold. It was a baby no more than a few months old, wrapped in a thin blanket that did little to protect her from the chill. Her tiny hands were clenched, her face streaked with tears and dirt. The sight struck her like a physical blow, and without thinking, she rushed forward. She knelt beside the child, gently lifting her into her arms. The baby's cries grew louder, panicked. But when she held her close, speaking softly in soothing words, the little one began to calm, leaning into the warmth she offered. She felt a strange mixture of fear and tenderness, a protective instinct she had never known she possessed. Her own chest tightened with emotions she could barely name. For a moment, she simply held the baby, letting herself breathe and think. Questions raced through her mind. Who had left this child here? Why? Was she alone or was someone watching? And most importantly, what should she do next? She felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her, heavier than anything she had carried before. And yet, in that moment, she also felt a spark of something new, an unexpected sense of purpose, a connection that reached into a part of her she had long thought empty. She wrapped the baby more securely in her coat, feeling the small body relax against hers. Her mind raced with practical concerns. She needed help, she needed safety, but her heart was alive in a way it had never been. She moved carefully through the alley, scanning her surroundings, alert to every sound and movement. Her steps were quick but cautious, balancing urgency with caution. She passed a dimly lit street, a few late-night workers casting curious glances, but no one approached. She felt a mix of relief and lingering tension. When she finally reached a more populated street, she searched for a place to seek immediate help. Her thoughts flickered between options: the hospital a few blocks away, the police station nearby, or maybe a community center. She chose the hospital, remembering the friendly face of a nurse she had met once in passing. Each step toward it was heavy with anticipation, but the baby seemed to sense her intent, nestling closer, her tiny fingers clutching at the fabric of her coat. She whispered gentle reassurances, her voice trembling slightly, feeling a strength she didn't know she had. The hospital doors loomed ahead, a beacon of safety. She entered quickly, approaching the reception desk, her voice urgent yet controlled. "Please, and there's a baby. She needs help." Within moments, a nurse appeared, taking the child from her arms with practiced care. The woman stepped back, watching as the baby was examined, her small chest rising and falling steadily. Relief washed over her, mingled with lingering anxiety. She had done it. She had saved this little life, and in doing so, she felt something awakening inside herself. A warmth, a bond, a sense of purpose that reached into the deepest corners of her heart. As she left the hospital that night, she felt changed. The city seemed different, alive in a way it hadn't before. The streets no longer felt lonely, and the silence of her apartment no longer pressed against her chest as heavily. For the first time, she understood that even in ordinary life, extraordinary moments could arrive unexpectedly, moments that could redefine who you were and what you believed possible. The baby's cries, once a source of alarm, had become the catalyst for something new. A chance to connect, to care, and perhaps to finally discover the love she had always missed. In the quiet hours of that night, as she walked home under the streetlights, she held her coat tightly around her, imagining the baby safe, warm, and cared for, and she realized something that surprised her. In saving this tiny life, she had begun to save her own. For the first time, she felt the stirrings of a bond she had longed for, a love she could nurture and protect. A sense of being needed that filled a void she had carried silently for so many years. And in that moment, she knew her life had shifted forever, that a new story was beginning, one written not just in quiet longing but in courage, compassion, and the love that could emerge from the most unexpected places. The next morning, she woke with a sense of restless energy she had never known before. Even the sunlight spilling softly through her window seemed different, warmer somehow, as if the world itself had shifted overnight. Her thoughts returned again and again to the baby she had rescued. She couldn't stop picturing the tiny face, the fragile little hands, the quiet vulnerability that had tugged at her heart so powerfully. She realized she had barely slept, turning over every detail in her mind. The soft whimpers, the way the baby had curled against her coat, the sudden surge of protectiveness that had come without warning. Despite knowing she had done the right thing, worry followed her like a shadow. Questions loomed over her like clouds. Had the baby been found by the authorities? Was she safe? Would someone come looking for her, or worse, had she put herself at risk by stepping into that alley? But alongside her anxiety, there was a strange, thrilling sense of purpose. For the first time in her life, she felt that she had truly mattered to someone, that her actions could make a difference in the life of another being who depended entirely on her. Unable to remain idle, she spent the morning researching. She learned about local child services, adoption centers, and hospital policies regarding abandoned infants. Every article, every story she read deepened her resolve. She realized that this was bigger than herself, bigger than fear, bigger than the quiet life she had resigned herself to. She wanted to know the baby was not just safe in that moment, but that she would continue to be cared for, loved, and nurtured. Her concern became an obsession, not out of control, but as a steady, determined devotion. She could feel a bond forming, invisible yet undeniable. Her thoughts kept circling back to her own childhood. Memories surfaced, half forgotten, of moments she had long buried, days when she had cried alone in her room, wondering why she never felt truly loved, nights when she had yearned for a comforting touch or a gentle word of reassurance. Now, holding the image of this small, helpless baby in her mind, she felt a strange mix of longing and hope. She realized that caring for this child, even from a distance, might be the beginning of healing for her own heart. She understood suddenly that the love she had always missed could take root in unexpected ways, through acts of courage and compassion. Later that day, she returned to the hospital, her footsteps quick but careful as she entered the familiar lobby. The nurse she had met before recognized her immediately, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "You came back," the nurse said softly. "I wasn't sure if you would." "I had to," she replied without thinking, her voice steady but carrying a tremor of emotion. "I need to know she's okay." The nurse led her to a small room where the baby was resting. Even from the doorway, she could see the little figure curled up under a soft blanket, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. A rush of relief washed over her. Seeing the child alive and cared for eased the tension that had tightened around her heart for the past hours. She approached slowly, speaking in a whisper, offering comfort she knew the baby could sense even in such a brief encounter. The baby stirred, opening her eyes just enough to meet hers, and in that gaze a connection deepened, silent yet powerful. Time seemed to slow in that room. She sat quietly, not wanting to startle the baby, yet longing to reach out, to touch, to hold, to assure her that she was safe and would not be abandoned again. The nurse watched them together with gentle understanding. "It's amazing," the nurse said, her voice soft. "How quickly she trusts you. You have a gift." The words made her heart ache in a way she couldn't describe. A gift. She had always thought of herself as ordinary, invisible even, but perhaps there was something in her nature that drew life to her, something nurturing and steady, capable of holding a fragile life in her hands without fear. It was humbling, yet empowering. She realized that her instinct to protect this child had revealed a part of herself she had long ignored. In the days that followed, she made frequent visits. Each time she brought small items, a soft blanket, tiny clothes, a small stuffed animal she had bought in secret. Every gesture, no matter how small, was her way of expressing care, building a bridge between herself and the child. She spoke gently, sang softly, and held the baby's hand when permitted, feeling the warmth of life so tiny yet so fierce. She watched the baby grow more comfortable with her presence, responding with soft coos and trusting glances. With each visit, her own heart began to transform. She discovered patience she had never fully exercised, the kind that demanded quiet attention, gentle guidance, and unwavering presence. She found courage in knowing that she could face the unknown, navigate fear, and provide comfort in a world that was often indifferent. And more than anything, she discovered joy in the simplest of moments. A smile, a gurgle, the way the baby's tiny fingers would grasp her own. Her friends noticed a change in her, subtle but undeniable. She walked taller, her eyes brighter, her smile more frequent. When they asked what had brought this new energy, she would smile quietly, not ready to share the details. Something sacred had begun, a private miracle that no one else could fully understand. Even at work, she carried herself differently, a quiet confidence and warmth emanating from her that drew people in. But her focus remained unwavering, the baby. She spent hours thinking about the child, planning ways to ensure she would always have the safety and love she deserved. During one visit, a social worker joined her, explaining the next steps in finding a permanent home for the baby. She listened intently, asking careful questions, absorbing every detail. She wanted to help in every way she could, to guide the process, to ensure the child would not just survive but thrive. The conversation was filled with technicalities, documents, procedures, timelines, but for her it was about something deeper. It was about ensuring that a small life that had started in fear and abandonment could know security, warmth, and trust. The social worker noticed her intensity and offered encouragement. "You clearly care very much for her," the social worker said, "and that matters. A bond like this, even at this stage, can make all the difference for a child. You're already giving her something priceless." Her eyes welled up with tears. Priceless. It was a word she had never associated with herself. Yet here she was, giving something priceless simply by being present. simply by caring, simply by believing that she could make a difference. She realized that in nurturing the baby, she was discovering how to nurture herself, how to open a part of her heart that had long remained closed, wary of disappointment and loss. Days turned into weeks and her routine began to shift. She rearranged her schedule to allow more visits, sometimes arriving before the baby woke and leaving only when the hospital staff gently reminded her of visiting hours. She became a familiar presence, a constant in a life that had been marked by uncertainty. The baby began to respond eagerly to her, recognizing the scent, the voice, the touch. She felt a surge of happiness each time the baby cooed or reached out her tiny arms toward her. At the same time, she became aware of her own emotions evolving. She felt a protective instinct she had never fully acknowledged before, a fierce determination to safeguard the child from any harm. She also felt a longing to provide the kind of love she had always missed herself, love that was consistent, unconditional, and nurturing. It was a strange and beautiful revelation. Through this small life, she was learning to heal the emptiness she had carried for so long. One evening, as she walked home, she reflected on the journey so far. She thought about the first night she had found the baby, the fear, the uncertainty, and the rush of responsibility that had filled her veins. And now, weeks later, she felt something entirely different, a sense of purpose, a connection that had grown stronger with each visit. The baby had become a mirror for her own heart, reflecting the capacity for love, courage, and resilience she had always possessed but never fully acknowledged. She understood, too, that this was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, decisions about the baby's future, navigating the complicated process of finding a permanent home and confronting her own fears of attachment and loss. But for the first time, she felt ready. She realized that love was not only about comfort and joy, but also about courage, sacrifice, and unwavering presence. She had stepped into a world she had never imagined, one filled with responsibility and uncertainty, and discovered that it was also rich with possibility, connection, and growth. As she prepared for bed that night, her mind wandered to dreams of the future. She imagined a home filled with laughter and warmth, a place where the baby could feel safe and loved, where she could provide not just care, but guidance, stability, and affection. She imagined herself learning and growing alongside this tiny human, discovering the depths of her own heart, and finding a love that had always eluded her. For the first time in her life, she felt truly alive. The ordinary life she had once accepted now seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a new reality where courage, compassion, and love were intertwined. She had discovered that one small act, a decision to step forward, to protect, to nurture, could ripple outward, changing lives, creating connections, and awakening parts of herself she had long forgotten. And she knew, deep within her heart, that the bond she was forming with this baby was only the beginning of a story that would forever transform both of their lives. The days following her growing bond with the baby brought a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before, but they also carried new challenges she had not anticipated. Caring from a distance, visiting the baby during set hours, and watching someone else make decisions for her felt both comforting and frustrating. She wanted to do more, to be more, but she had to learn to navigate the delicate balance between involvement and respect for the rules. Every visit, every smile exchanged, every coo and tiny grasp of her fingers became precious, each one a reminder of the connection she had risked everything to protect. One morning, she arrived at the hospital to find that the baby had developed a mild fever overnight. Her heart clenched at the thought, and she moved swiftly to the baby's side. The nurses were attentive, but seeing the tiny body shivering beneath the blankets shook something deep inside her. She gently lifted the child, her hands trembling slightly, whispering comforting words. She stayed by her side as the medical staff worked, her own anxiety rising, the fear of losing the baby in any form, even temporarily, making her feel raw and exposed. It was in moments like this that she realized the depth of her attachment. The fear she felt was not just for the baby's health. It was for the sense of purpose and connection that she had finally discovered. The thought of being powerless, of watching the baby suffer without being able to fully protect her, ignited a fierce determination. She vowed silently that she would do everything in her power to keep this small life safe, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. Over the next few weeks, she became more involved in understanding the procedures surrounding the baby's care. She spoke with social workers, attended meetings when invited, and began learning about the legal and logistical hurdles involved in finding a permanent home. The process was complicated, filled with rules and regulations designed to protect the child, yet it often felt slow, bureaucratic, and at times impersonal. She learned to navigate the tension between patience and urgency, realizing that while the system existed for good reason, she would need to advocate fiercely for the baby to ensure her safety and well-being. Her dedication did not go unnoticed. The nurses and hospital staff began to recognize her commitment, often offering small reassurances or extra information about the baby's condition. "You clearly care for her," one nurse said quietly during a routine check. "That kind of connection can make a real difference in a child's life." Her eyes filled with tears at the acknowledgement. For so long she had felt invisible, unimportant, and yet here was proof that her actions and feelings mattered, that she had the ability to profoundly impact someone else's life. Despite these small victories, she faced moments of doubt. Some days were heavy with frustration. She wanted to hold the baby for longer, to provide comfort in ways that visiting hours could not allow. She worried constantly about her well-being, imagining worst-case scenarios that kept her awake at night. And yet, through every anxious thought and sleepless hour, she found herself growing stronger, more resilient. She learned to channel fear into action, to turn worry into advocacy, and to transform uncertainty into hope. One afternoon, during a particularly difficult meeting with a social worker, she encountered a challenge she had not anticipated. The worker explained that there were several potential families interested in adopting the baby, each offering different opportunities and risks. Her heart sank as she listened, torn between wanting the child to find a safe home quickly and wanting to ensure that the bond they had formed would not be severed abruptly. She realized that love sometimes meant letting go, even when it was the hardest thing in the world. She left the meeting with a heavy heart, wandering through the city streets to clear her mind. The noise of traffic, the chatter of pedestrians, the distant hum of life all felt distant and muted compared to the storm inside her. She thought of the first night she had found the baby, the fear and the helplessness she had felt, and how far she had come since then. She had learned courage she didn't know she possessed, patience she had never practiced, and love in its purest, most selfless form. Yet the thought of the baby leaving her life, even for safety and happiness, was almost unbearable. In the days that followed, she decided to focus on the moments she could control. She brought small, meaningful gifts each visit, soft blankets, tiny clothes, and handmade toys that she spent hours creating in her apartment. She read to the baby, sang quietly, and held her hands when allowed. Each interaction strengthened their bond, and she noticed subtle changes in the baby. Trust deepening, comfort increasing, a sense of recognition that warmed her heart. She realized that while she could not control the future, she could enrich the present, providing love and care in every available moment. One evening, she stayed later than usual, sitting quietly beside the baby as the room emptied. She watched the tiny chest rise and fall, the small fingers twitching in sleep, and she felt an overwhelming surge of emotion, memories of her own childhood, the longing she had carried for affection and care, mingled with the love she now felt for this child. She realized that in saving the baby, she had also discovered a way to become the mother she had never had. She could provide the nurturing, the comfort, and the presence that she herself had once missed, and in doing so, she was learning to nurture herself as well. As the weeks passed, she faced new challenges. There were questions about health, potential obstacles in adoption procedures, and moments of fear about the baby's safety and well-being. Each challenge tested her patience and courage, yet each also strengthened her resolve. She learned to advocate for the baby, to communicate clearly and persistently with social workers, and to navigate the complexities of the system without losing sight of her emotional connection. She realized that being a caregiver was not just about love, but also about responsibility, resilience, and the ability to act decisively when necessary. Through it all, she noticed changes within herself. She became more confident, more assertive, and more attuned to her own feelings. She recognized that love could be a powerful motivator, capable of inspiring courage and determination she had never imagined. She also discovered the importance of self-care, understanding that to care for another fully, she needed to acknowledge and address her own needs and emotions. The journey was as much about personal growth as it was about providing care for the baby. During one visit, a small crisis brought her strength and instincts to the forefront. The baby had a sudden episode of coughing and discomfort, and she reacted quickly, calling for a nurse, supporting the child and staying calm, even as her own heart raced. The medical team praised her composure, noting that her presence had a calming effect on the baby. In that moment, she realized the depth of her own resilience and the powerful bond that had formed between them. She felt a quiet pride tempered by humility, understanding that love often required action as much as emotion. She also began to notice the subtle ways the baby responded to her presence, the way the little hands would reach for her, the soft coos of recognition, the calm that settled over the child when she held her close. These small signs became treasures, reminders that the connection they shared was real and meaningful. She understood that while she might not be able to change the circumstances of the baby's life entirely, she could provide a foundation of trust, security, and love that would leave a lasting impact. Amid these challenges, she continued to reflect on her own journey. She thought about the courage it had taken to step into that dark alley, to risk fear and uncertainty for the sake of another life. She realized that courage was not a single act, but a series of choices made over time, small decisions that added up to a life-changing impact. She understood that by saving the baby, she had also saved herself in a way, discovering the depths of her own heart, the capacity for love, and the strength to face uncertainty with determination and grace. The bond between them grew steadily. She became a constant presence, a source of comfort, and a figure of stability in a world that had been uncertain for the baby. In her own heart, she began to feel the quiet stirrings of motherhood, the desire to protect, nurture, and guide. She recognized that love was not simply an emotion, but an action, a commitment, and a responsibility that shaped every decision she made. And she understood that this journey, while filled with challenges, was also an opportunity to create a profound connection that could endure beyond circumstances and time. One evening, as she prepared to leave the hospital, she lingered by the baby's side, watching her sleep peacefully. She whispered promises she did not fully understand yet, promises of care, safety, and unwavering presence. She felt a profound sense of purpose, a recognition that her life had been transformed by a single act of courage, and that the path ahead, though uncertain, held the possibility of growth, healing, and love. She left the hospital that night carrying the weight of responsibility lightly, tempered by the joy and fulfillment she had discovered in nurturing another life. As the weeks turned into months, her connection with the baby grew stronger, deeper, and more profound. Each visit became a thread weaving their lives together, and she began to feel as though a missing piece of her own heart had finally been found. Yet along with the joy, new challenges and fears emerged, testing her resolve and the strength of the bond she had fought so hard to nurture. One afternoon, the hospital staff approached her with a serious expression. The social worker explained that an inquiry had come in from a family interested in adopting the baby, a family that seemed well-intentioned and able to provide stability. But the process meant that the baby would soon spend more time with them, and her visits could become limited. Her chest tightened at the thought. She had known this moment would come, had anticipated the day when someone else might take responsibility for the child. But knowing it intellectually and facing it emotionally were two very different things. She spent the night after that meeting, tossing and turning, memories and fears mingling in her mind. She remembered the night she first found the baby, shivering in her arms, vulnerable and alone. She remembered the relief when the baby had been safely taken to the hospital, and the sense of purpose that had filled her heart. And now, she felt a different kind of fear. Fear of losing the connection she had fought so hard to build. Fear of watching the baby leave her life, even for good reasons. The thought of absence felt unbearable, yet she knew that love sometimes required letting go. The following visits became bittersweet. She noticed the baby's reactions to new people, how she would pause when meeting strangers and then warm slowly as trust was built. She felt a pang of jealousy, though she knew it was natural, and reminded herself that her role was not to control the child's life, but to ensure she had love and stability. Still, she couldn't deny the deep yearning in her chest, the quiet hope that somehow, some way, the baby's life could remain intertwined with hers. During one particularly emotional visit, the baby fell ill again, a minor infection that required closer observation. She stayed by her side as the nurses attended to the child, holding her hand, speaking softly and soothing her through the discomfort. In that moment, she realized the depth of her own courage. Fear and worry had once held her back, but now, when faced with potential harm to the baby, she felt a calm determination. She understood that love was not just about joy and comfort. It was about presence, advocacy, and unwavering support even in the face of uncertainty and difficulty. Outside the hospital, she reflected on her own life and the ways in which it had changed. She thought about the quiet, lonely days she had once accepted as normal, the childhood moments marked by distance and absence, and the longing she had carried for a maternal figure she had never truly had. In saving and nurturing this baby, she had discovered a path to heal those old wounds. She could now give the love she had always missed, even if the child would not remain in her care permanently. And yet the desire to be more than just a visitor, to play a lasting role in the baby's life, burned within her with growing intensity. As the adoption process progressed, she learned that the family interested in the baby had a stable home and the means to provide a good life. This knowledge brought relief but also renewed anxiety. She wanted the best for the child, but she also wanted to remain connected, to continue providing love, guidance, and care. She began to explore ways to maintain a relationship within the boundaries allowed by the system, determined not to let the bond they had formed be erased. It was a delicate dance of hope and patience, requiring careful communication and persistence. One evening, while sitting quietly in the hospital room, she watched the baby sleep and felt an overwhelming wave of emotion. She realized that her role had evolved from rescuer to caregiver, from stranger to a figure of love and security. She had discovered patience she had never exercised, courage she had never known, and a capacity for selfless devotion that transformed her understanding of herself. In nurturing the baby, she had nurtured her own soul, filling spaces that had long been empty, and awakening a maternal instinct she never imagined she possessed. The days leading up to the transition were filled with preparation. She helped pack small belongings, selecting tiny clothes, blankets, and favorite toys to accompany the baby to her new home. Each item was chosen with care, a silent promise that love would continue beyond physical presence. She labeled the items meticulously, ensuring nothing would be forgotten. Though she tried to maintain a composed exterior, there were moments when tears slipped down her cheeks, unbidden and unashamed. She allowed herself to feel the grief, understanding that acknowledging it was part of the process of loving deeply and letting go. During this time, she also found unexpected support from those around her. The hospital staff, social workers, and even casual acquaintances offered encouragement and guidance, recognizing the depth of her dedication. They reminded her that her influence on the baby's life was lasting and significant, that the child had already experienced love, care, and stability because of her courage. These words, simple as they were, provided comfort. She began to understand that motherhood was not only about biology or custody. It was about the love and care you offer, and the impact you leave on a life, no matter the circumstances. The day of the baby's transition arrived with a mixture of anticipation, anxiety, and sorrow. She arrived early, making sure everything was ready and that the baby's favorite items were packed and organized. The social worker explained the final steps, the legalities, and the schedule. She listened carefully, absorbing every detail while keeping her emotions in check. As she held the baby one last time in her arms, she felt a mixture of pride and sadness. She had saved this child, nurtured her, and loved her fiercely, and now she was entrusting her to another family, hoping they would honor and continue the love she had provided. The baby stirred slightly, recognizing her touch and pressing close. She whispered softly, her voice full of emotion yet steady, promising love, care, and presence. She felt the weight of responsibility, the intensity of attachment, and the profound impact of her actions. It was a moment of transformation, one that crystallized her growth and the depth of her maternal instincts. She realized that love was not limited by proximity or permanence. It was the choices you made, the care you offered, and the bond you nurtured that mattered most. As the adoption family arrived, she observed the careful introductions, the gentle reassurances, and the gradual handover. She noticed the baby's eyes widening, her small fingers reaching out, her trust slowly extending to new arms. The process was both heart-wrenching and beautiful. She felt an immense sense of relief knowing the baby would be safe and loved, while also grappling with the ache of absence. She stayed through the initial moments, offering guidance to the new caregivers, and quietly observing to ensure the transition was smooth. Once the process was complete, she stepped back, giving space while remaining present in a supportive way. The baby was now surrounded by love and stability, and she could see that her efforts had laid a foundation for a life filled with care. She felt a complex mixture of emotions: joy, pride, sadness, and hope. But she understood that this was part of the journey. She had learned that true love often required selflessness, patience, and courage, and that her role in this child's life, though evolving, remained vital. Walking home that evening, she reflected on the months that had passed since that fateful night in the alley. She thought about the fear, the uncertainty, and the overwhelming sense of responsibility that had accompanied her first encounter with the baby. She thought about the growth she had experienced, the lessons in patience, resilience, and selfless love. And she thought about the bond that had formed, a connection that transcended circumstance and would continue to shape both their lives. For the first time, she realized that motherhood was not solely defined by biology or constant physical presence. It was defined by the love, care, and courage you offer, the willingness to risk fear and uncertainty for the well-being of another, and the ability to nurture, guide, and protect in every way possible. She understood that she had become the mother she had always longed for in her own life, not because she had a child of her own permanently, but because she had discovered the capacity for love and care that had long lain dormant within her. In the days following the transition, she continued to visit when allowed, maintaining the connection in small, meaningful ways. She wrote letters, sent pictures, and spoke softly with the baby, ensuring that the bond they had formed remained alive. She found joy in these small interactions, comfort in the knowledge that her love and care had made a lasting impact. And she also found healing, realizing that through saving and nurturing another life, she had discovered the love, courage, and purpose she had always sought for herself. She began to see her own life differently. The quiet apartment, the predictable routines, and the moments of solitude no longer felt empty. Instead, they were spaces for reflection, growth, and preparation for the love she would continue to offer in the world. She understood that her journey with this baby had transformed her, giving her confidence, resilience, and the knowledge that she could face uncertainty with courage and grace. As she settled into this new rhythm, she found herself dreaming of the future. She imagined a life filled with meaningful connections, the ability to nurture and care for those in need, and the possibility of continuing to be a guiding presence in the baby's life. She also imagined a future where she could extend the love and courage she had discovered to others, recognizing that the impact of her actions extended far beyond that single alley, that night, and that child. And as she looked back on the journey, she realized that the act of saving the baby had not only changed the child's life, it had changed hers forever. She had discovered that love could be transformative, that courage could be born from necessity, and that the bond between caregiver and child could shape identity, purpose, and the capacity for compassion. She had found the mother she never had within herself, and in doing so, had discovered a new beginning, one filled with hope, growth, and enduring love. The morning air was crisp, carrying a freshness that made her feel alive in a way she had not experienced for a long time. She woke with a sense of purpose, her thoughts immediately drifting to the baby. Though weeks had passed since the transition, she still visited when she could, maintaining the connection they had built with quiet determination. Each time she saw the baby's small face light up at the sight of her, she felt a deep, indescribable warmth. It was proof that love, even across changes and distance, had a way of enduring. That day she had arranged a longer visit, wanting to spend as much time as possible simply being present. She entered the hospital room and found the baby sitting up, eyes bright and curious. The moment their eyes met, a small smile spread across the child's face, and she felt her heart swell. Every challenge, every moment of fear and uncertainty had led to this, the opportunity to nurture, connect, and witness the life she had saved flourish. She knelt beside the baby, her hands brushing gently over tiny fingers, her voice soft as she spoke words of comfort, love, and encouragement. Over time, she had noticed remarkable changes in herself. She had become more patient, resilient, and courageous, learning to face uncertainty without succumbing to fear. She had discovered that love was not always about permanence, but about the impact one could make in the life of another, however temporary it might seem. And she had realized that motherhood was not only about holding a child in her arms, but about being present, nurturing and shaping the life of another human being in ways both big and small. The baby had grown noticeably, her movements more confident, her expressions more animated, and her trust in her caregiver unwavering. She observed the child closely, noting subtle reactions, the tilt of the head, the excitement in her eyes when she recognized her voice, the way she reached out instinctively. These small details became treasures, affirmations of the bond they shared and reminders that love and care could leave lasting impressions. She understood that in teaching trust, security, and affection, she was shaping the foundation for the baby's future in profound ways. Despite the joys, there were moments of worry that she could not ignore. She knew that life was unpredictable, that challenges would continue to arise, and that her role might be limited in ways she could not control. But instead of succumbing to fear, she had learned to navigate it with grace, focusing on what she could do in each moment. She spoke with social workers, offering guidance and assistance when permitted, ensuring that every decision considered the baby's best interests. Her presence had become a constant source of reassurance for the child, and in turn for herself. One afternoon, she received news that a special program had been arranged to allow her more extended time with the baby. Even outside the hospital, the announcement filled her with a mix of relief and excitement. She realized that her efforts, dedication, and love had not gone unnoticed. It was a validation of the bond they shared and an opportunity to continue fostering it in meaningful ways. She felt a quiet joy, knowing that the baby would continue to have a source of consistency, care, and affection beyond the formalities of adoption processes. During these extended visits, she found new ways to engage with the child. They would read together, explore small sensory activities, and play games that encouraged curiosity and learning. She noticed the baby's laughter, the way it bubbled up unexpectedly and filled the room with light. She marveled at the tiny milestones, the first time the baby attempted to walk with her support, the first words spoken in her presence, the moments of recognition and understanding. Each success was a shared victory, a testament to the love and care that had nurtured growth and confidence. Through this journey, she also reflected deeply on her own past. Memories of the childhood she had endured, marked by absence and longing, surfaced with clarity. She understood now that those experiences had shaped her capacity for empathy, compassion, and courage. They had prepared her, in ways she could not have imagined, to step into this role and provide the nurturing presence she had always craved. She realized that her own journey of healing and growth was intertwined with the baby's, each influencing the other in subtle but profound ways. There were days when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, when the weight of responsibility, emotional investment, and practical challenges pressed heavily on her shoulders. Yet she discovered strength she had never known before. She learned that caring deeply did not mean losing oneself, but rather finding resilience, balance, and a deeper understanding of human connection. She began to see that love was both a gift and a responsibility, and that in giving it fully, she was transforming not only another life but her own as well. One evening, as she held the baby close, she noticed a change in the child's demeanor. The baby looked up at her with clear recognition, a tiny hand reaching instinctively to her face as if to say, "I know you. I trust you." The simplicity of the gesture struck her with overwhelming emotion. She realized that in these small moments, the essence of motherhood, care, guidance, presence, and love, was being expressed and reciprocated. She felt tears prick her eyes, not of sorrow but of profound connection and fulfillment. The baby's adoptive family also became an integral part of this evolving journey. She observed their interactions with interest and appreciation, noting the love and stability they provided. Instead of jealousy or fear, she felt a quiet sense of peace, recognizing that love could expand rather than diminish. She could be a nurturing presence without displacing the care provided by others. This understanding allowed her to step into a more mature, balanced form of caregiving, one that embraced collaboration, patience, and long-term commitment in new ways. As months passed, she witnessed the baby's development with wonder. Each word learned, each skill acquired, each display of affection was a shared triumph. She celebrated quietly, feeling pride in the progress and resilience of the child she had saved and nurtured. She knew that these milestones were not hers alone. They belonged to the baby, to the adoptive family, and to the journey they had undertaken together. Yet she felt a deep, undeniable satisfaction in knowing that her presence had played a crucial role in shaping these early experiences. In her own life, she noticed remarkable changes as well. The quiet loneliness she had once carried had transformed into a sense of purpose, confidence, and emotional richness. She had learned to trust her instincts, to act courageously in moments of uncertainty, and to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength. She discovered that nurturing another life had taught her to nurture herself, to recognize her own worth, and to understand the profound power of love, empathy, and resilience. Through all of this, she began to envision the future. She imagined the baby growing into a confident, loved, and secure individual, carrying the lessons of care and trust she had been given. She also envisioned her own life evolving, filled with meaningful connections, the ability to continue nurturing others, and the courage to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey with the baby had opened her heart and mind to possibilities she had never before considered, creating a sense of hope, joy, and fulfillment that was both unexpected and transformative. One day, during a visit, the baby reached for her and whispered a word she could barely understand. It was an imperfect, toddler-like attempt at speech, but the meaning was clear: recognition, trust, and connection. She smiled through tears, holding the child close and whispering words of encouragement. In that instant, she realized that all the fears, the sleepless nights, the uncertainties, and the challenges had led to this moment, a moment of pure love and affirmation, a moment that defined the essence of their shared journey. She also reflected on the significance of courage in this story. The act of stepping into that dark alley, of taking responsibility in a moment of uncertainty and fear, had set in motion a chain of events that transformed both lives. She understood that bravery was not always about grand gestures, but about small, decisive actions, taken with intention and heart. Each choice, each act of care, each moment of presence had contributed to the profound connection they now shared. As the story reached its emotional resolution, she recognized the depth of her own growth. She had become a mother in the truest sense, not defined solely by biology or permanent custody, but by love, care, presence, and unwavering dedication. She had learned that motherhood could take many forms, that nurturing another life could heal old wounds, and that love, when given selflessly, created lasting impact and meaning. The baby's development and happiness became her continuing motivation. She remained a consistent presence, a source of love, guidance, and reassurance. Each visit, each interaction, reinforced the bond they shared and provided comfort, stability, and joy. She also maintained connections with the adoptive family, supporting the child's holistic growth and ensuring that the lessons of trust, care, and love continued to be nurtured.